I'm Becky Fawcett, a mom by adoption, an infertile blonde, which is a big part of today's conversation, a female founder, and a businesswoman. Podcast rulebooks will say that your introduction must always be the same for every episode. My guess is mine won't be. For most of my life, I tried to be perfect and do what everyone else was doing. And then I tried to have children. And that plot twist is why I have specifically invited my guest on today. Now I look for any opportunity to be different. I'm an outspoken advocate who wants to change the world, and this sometimes gets me into trouble. But for the most part, it helps me make real connections with real people. Welcome to my podcast, The Fawcett Report. I'm so glad you're here. And I want to say hi to my friend, Jaime, who is joining us today. Jaime is a board-certified reproductive endocrinologist and director of fertility preservation at CCRM Fertility in New York City. She has a very accomplished bio, but I'm going to skip some of that because what I really want to tell you about her is that she is an advocate in success for family building, no matter what that looks like. And she is known in her medical world as being truthful and dealing in reality. And I think this is one of the greatest things about my friend, Dr. Jaime Knopman. And welcome to the Fawcett Report. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I think it's really great. And first and foremost, I want to say I've been looking forward to this all week. Secondly, I want to let everybody know that you are not my infertility doctor, and I was not a patient at CCRM. I had both of my kids by the time I met you, which was well past all of this stuff in my life. And I also want to say, because I always say this, you know this about me, in any conversation about IVF, I am not anti-IVF in any way, shape, or form. I would be a complete hypocrite, and that's not my MO every day. I did do IVF 5 times. I got pregnant 3 times. I had 3 miscarriages, and $82,000 was spent a long time ago. And at the end of all that, I had one thing on my resume, and it was failed infertility patient. And it was not a good thing on my resume. And I was left with no answers and no direction. And I still wanted to be a mom. I chose to adopt my kids. As Jaime knows, my girls are now 19 and 15. And I have this real belief in my heart and my head that the infertility and adoption worlds need to work better together in a more constructive way to help those who leave the IVF world without a live birth like I did. Are you ready to get started?
I'm ready.
Let's first talk about the numbers, because I think people are so shocked to know, are there really 8 million infertile people in the United States every year?
There really are. We talk about breast cancer. We always say 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer over the course of her life. The number is not dissimilar for those who will experience fertility struggles. So it's very real, and it should be a big part of our conversation.
It really should be. And I also think that a lot of people don't admit they had fertility struggles. So sometimes you think people had it easy. And I think that's also part of the problem. Like there's still this sort of shame I see, especially in groups on social media as moms and stuff. People are embarrassed that they're infertile and they don't want to talk about it. Why do you think that is?
I think there's always been shame around fertility because we feel it's an innate part of something our bodies should do. And when our bodies can't do it and we think of our bodies as failing us, you said IVF failure, we're embarrassed by that. And we don't want to let other people know that I was unable to do what should be the most innate thing in life, which is produce a child.
And I'm going to say what I always want to say is when you can't get pregnant or you're trying to get pregnant, everybody knows you're having sex and no one wants to talk about that either. Like they don't want to say that word out loud and talk about their intimate private life with their partner. And I think that's part of it, but that's a biological fact of how you get pregnant. I just can't figure out why it was such an awful topic back then for me, which was 20 something years ago. And now it still is.
I think it still is. I think it's less so today. And I've always said, I think the introduction of what we call fertility preservation patients has really shifted the sort of scope of fertility practices. And so I do think it's more open now than it used to be. But I do still think people are quite secretive about it. And particularly patients who use third-party reproduction, donor egg, donor sperm, surrogacy, you won't often hear people talk about it. I saw a new patient yesterday whose mom brought her in, and her mom came in and said, I suffered from infertility a lot. I ultimately used a donor egg. My daughter is the product of a donor egg. And I love her. I'm so grateful I had her, but I don't want her to suffer the pain that I felt. So I'm here with her. She was 28 to freeze her eggs. It was so nice the way she presented it. And I think that a lot of times we hide that and therefore we're not able to get support.
I totally agree with you on that. And I don't mean to jump all over the place because I still want to talk some of the numbers and success rates and everything. But first, I want to talk about the donor egg and the donor sperm. I have lost friends over the years, let's be perfectly honest, because this would be backtracked to where I'm outspoken and I get myself into trouble, is because friends would say to me, oh, that's so great you adopted, but that's not for me. And I did a donor egg. And I'm like, it's almost a little bit of the same thing because it's not your biology. And oh my God, the door slammed in my face. And that actual one friend never talked to me again. And I get it. I get that they don't want to say the word adoption, but it's also not your biology. It is a bit of a different story.
I think that donor egg offers a lot of women, which is a positive, is you can be pregnant. And
that's it.
Yeah,
that's
a lot of people
and
want to have that experience of being pregnant and birthing a child and breastfeeding and all of that. That's a beautiful process for some. But then there's people who come in now electively to do surrogacy, right? They have no fertility struggles. And they're like, pregnancy's not for me. I've known it's not for me. But and so we each have our different views, I think, of what we think parenthood is going to look like and be like. And I think what's interesting, what you brought up, it's nobody's business to judge, right? These are the options, whatever is right for you. If a partner is present for your partner, that's your decision. Obviously, there's things that are medically unsafe. You don't see us putting back 4 embryos in somebody's uterus anymore, right? Because that's unsafe. But whatever you want, whatever your family looks like, we want to help you achieve that in the best way possible.
And I actually remember a specific conversation on a beach with a friend who did choose egg donor because she wanted to be pregnant. Something came up in our conversation and she said, I've always felt weird around you. And I'm like, oh God, here we go. And she goes, because I feel guilty. And I'm like, why the hell do you feel guilty? And she goes, because I did an egg donor and I didn't adopt. And I go, tell me why you did an egg donor. And she said, I really wanted to be pregnant. And I go, there it is.
Yeah.
I don't know why you feel guilty around me. I didn't feel that need at the end of it. It wasn't for me. I wanted to be like everybody else. That was more important to me, was to be like everybody else and to do, as you said, Jamie, what I'd been raised to think I was supposed to do, which was to get pregnant and have a baby. But I actually never thought that the process was great. I was terrified about how I was getting that thing out of me the 3 times I was pregnant. And so for me, that wasn't the overwhelming factor. And I said to my friend, I said, this is why this has to be talked about more. How long have you felt guilty around me? Our kids are like in middle school. This is ridiculous. And I was so grateful for that conversation. And I also have a friend who never got pregnant and adopted her 2 kids. And she's never been okay with the fact that she never got pregnant. That's okay too. And you need to mourn that fact in the way you do and maybe go to a therapist and talk about that, because I get it. Everybody has their different expectations of what they see motherhood is going to look like and how they're going to get there. But for some of us, there's a big roadblock in the way of getting us down.
You brought this up, and I think I always say a big part of what I do is help people move through grief. I think grief really is 5 stages, and they're not linear. You're not in it for 2 weeks here, 2 weeks through. But you really have to move through those processes to come to acceptance of whatever your journey is going to be. Otherwise, you'll live with anger, you'll live with sadness, you'll live with jealousy. And sometimes I have to say to patients, like, I want to help you, but you're really being mean to everyone here. And I get that you're angry at what happened. I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
But we're
Yeah.
trying to help you. So if
Yeah.
you can just give us a little bit of grace, and then usually it's quite positive. The patient will, oftentimes there's tears or like, I'm just so mad that this happened. I'm like, I get it. I was mad that I got a divorce.
Yeah.
There's stuff
Yeah.
that we all hit bumps. But I actually think that we have to learn to move through these processes because there's life on the other side.
So one of the stories that I want to share with everybody here, and I do like to talk a lot about my experience because I didn't want to hear the word adopting when I was going through this. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to even go there. And I didn't want to adopt. Joke's on me. I now have these 2 amazing kids and the work I do through helpusadopt.org. But back then, I didn't want to do it. And the reason I talk about it so publicly is because it has to be talked about, because look where I ended up. And I was interviewed once, I don't know, on the phone or something, and in the apartment in New York. And my daughter Jane was about 11. And whenever anyone asked me about this IVF road and how did I make the jump from being pregnant with my biological child to adopting, I always told people it was the death of a dream. And that was the phrase I coined over the years. And I think it's pretty accurate. And you just talked about grief and anger. And that was it. It was the death of a dream. When I finished the interview and I'm wrapping it up, and in walks my daughter to the living room and goes, "Why do you tell people it was the death of a dream when you couldn't get pregnant?" And I'm like, oh, Jesus. Shine up my Mother of the Year trophy.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I am the worst ever. And I was like, I have destroyed this child forever. Like, this is horrible. And she said, "Mom, what I don't understand is why no one said to you, maybe there's a new dream and maybe it was me." That was my 11-year-old.
Yeah. That's so beautiful.
And that is why you and I are here today. That is why this is so important to me, that we talk about what we can do to help bridge these communities and have this open discussion for, I think the number is, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's approximately 2 million people a year exit IVF like Becky Fawcett unsuccessfully. Is that about right?
The data, actually, the best data comes from Europe because it's mostly nationalized healthcare, right? So it's covered by the government. And what they show is that 50% of people leave treatment, even actually prematurely, even when the fertility doctors are like, you can keep going, like you actually might have success. Most of the time people leave because in this country, it's probably financial exhaustion because you probably exhaust your insurance. And I would say probably second is more than anything is emotional because you're just tapped out, right? You're like, I can't take it anymore. The combination of those two factors are why frequently couples leave the fertility world because they just can't take it anymore.
I tell people all the time, I'm like, I still think, again, my kids are 19 and 15. So I did IVF, 23 years ago, 24 years ago. I think the backs of my hips still hurt from those progesterone shots. I don't even
really
know if
give
that's
them that much anymore.
Yeah, I think now it's different. But like those shots were like a mechanical pencil lead going in the back of your hip back then. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I mean, that is some jarring things that you go through. And I'm so excited to continue this conversation right now because what can we do? You are such an advocate for the truth and reality. And again, I'm using myself as an example. I'll throw myself under the train. If you had been my doctor, I got pregnant, just so everybody knows the thing. 5 rounds. I got pregnant the first round. I had a miscarriage at 16 weeks. That was pretty awful. I didn't get pregnant the second round. And everything was a fresh cycle. I was 33 when I started. Third cycle, I got pregnant. I had a miscarriage at 12 weeks. Fourth cycle, the only difference was I did acupuncture and made my husband do acupuncture. My doctor at the time did not believe in it, but I was like, I'll try anything. I would have tried anything back then. And that was the only cycle, that fourth cycle, that we got enough to freeze. So the fourth cycle didn't work. And we had a promise going into the last one that if the fifth cycle with the frozen cycle didn't work, we would adopt because we were done. And we had spent pretty much all our money.
Yeah.
Fifth cycle worked. And I had a miscarriage at 10 weeks on Christmas Eve of 2004. and I met with our adoption attorney. I'd already lined up my plan B because that's me. I'd lined it up, and I think I had our adoption attorney meeting in mid-January, and Jane came home end of October 2005. So that's my story. But no one, no matter what they had told me, could have talked me out of 5 cycles. And I really want to let people know that. Like, I'm not a hypocrite here, but I'm wondering why, right? Like, why did I see adoption as a consolation prize? Why is the world saying, you know what? This is all the ways you can build your family. And if all else fails, you'll adopt. And that's still sort of the MO today. When you see the list of how you can build your family, adoption starts with an A and possibly should be at the front for alphabetical, but it is always the caboose in the conversation. Yeah. And I get it. I'm not saying don't try to do it the way you want to do it, but why can't we make it more comfortable? Why is it so scary still?
Like I would say, medicine is a team sport, right? Nobody wins alone. It's just like how we rely on our nursing, our medical assistants, our embryology lab, our acupuncturist, our mental health providers. It should be a piece of that puzzle where we're saying these are all the services we can offer you, and let's help you get to where you want, whatever that vision looks like to you. Women in medicine have really changed the game. And there's a lot of studies that have shown this. We are more likely to ask for help. We're more patient. We're more empathetic. And I do think there's less of this white coat sitting atop and you're below and blah, blah, blah. I think it's more of a team approach. I do think that's been really beneficial for all areas of medicine, not just fertility.
Well, it's great. It really is great. And again, my youngest daughter is desperate for a younger sibling. She's pretty funny about it. She's like, Mom, I know you're almost 55 and I'm in menopause, for God's sake. So you can tell me right now that it's a funny joke. But Brooke's like, I bet with the advances in technology that someone could get you pregnant now. And I'm like, we're not playing that science game, Brooke. But maybe she's right too. Like maybe there's been enough advances that the old Becky Fawcett could have, who knows? Like my road was supposed to be this. And it became very clear to me along the way that it was. But it took a while to get there. And I'm never here to say you have to adopt. That is not my soapbox either. But I think there's so many myths about adoption that scare the hell out of people. And hello, I was one of those people that are wrong. People tell me all the time when they meet my girls, they're like, how did you get a blonde-haired, blue-eyed daughter? I'm like, because that's what came out. I just don't understand it. And people will say, those are your adopted children? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, but they're so beautiful. I'm like, oh, for God's sake. Is this really what we think about adoption? And people are like, I could never adopt outside of my race, which let's be clear, I did not. But I'm like, that's a conscious decision. Adoption was told to me at the beginning by someone. Adoption is supposed to be a blessing, not a burden. And you choose, you make decisions on how you adopt. And this is it. I just want to be a myth buster and make it so that it is part of the everyday conversation, like when you list all the ways. And I get it. Listen, there's only a very slim percentage of people who wake up in their life and say, I'm only adopting, no matter what my fertility might do. And I get that. But there's a lot of people like me who I think is the driving force behind who's adopts. And they're terrified when they leave the world of IVF. And the best part about what we do for your patients too, of those who, or anybody listening today, is that we offer adoption grants to $30,000. And over half of our applicants at least tell us, because we ask the question, not everybody answers it, but over 62% of our applicants in a year say they're a failed infertility patient.
I would
believe they didn't even have the money to do it. And they knew that. They knew that it was too risky and they didn't have the money to really do it. And I just want to tell people that we help people who go down the infertility route. And I'm sorry if you get here and you were unprepared, but we're happy to help you.
Yeah.
Because I was that girl. I was that girl. It's okay. It's okay. And you know what? You might come out of this saying, I had a different story too. So that's just what I'm hoping to do with the IVF world.
The fertility world has changed so much in the past 25 years, But so has the picture of the modern American family, right? Like, I do think that's been a big plus. I never see couples coming in their 20s anymore. I joke around. I'm like, God, I can't remember the last time I saw a couple in their 20s trying to have a baby. Again, I work in New York City, so it's obviously a select population, but people build their families in a different way. We look at families different. And so I think that's actually beneficial for the people that come after us. There's more flexibility in what you want to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I also want to make adoption just a more normalized conversation is this. I'm raising 2 adopted girls. When people tell me about adoption, what if your son falls in love with my daughter? Are my kids going to be not ideal spouses someday because they're adopted? There's a stigma around this. And the other thing is, what about the next generations of people who might be infertile too? Just like you said with that woman who came in to freeze her eggs, that's a great woman who came in and said, I want to take my example and what I struggled with. And it wasn't that
she was interested. She was like, I'm so grateful I had my daughter. She wasn't saying, I don't want my daughter. She was saying, I don't want my daughter to feel the pain.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Like,
and if I can mitigate that. Correct.
That's my platform. And you and I have talked about this is there are so many, and I definitely want to talk more about how women doctors are changing the infertility world. And there are a lot of advances, but you have to have money to do some of these extra things. And so where we give grants is a different demographic. Okay. So not everybody can afford the extra add-ons that might make it possible to have a successful infertility journey. And not everybody can afford the egg freezing. And I also want this conversation to be inclusive and kind to those who can't. As women, you grow up with a lot of expectations on this one thing.
The insurance landscape has changed a lot. And so there's more and more insurance companies that actually provide coverage.
Well, that's great. And that's great because I had none of that.
Concept changed a lot. So there's now these companies, Progeny, Maven, Carrot, that sell fertility benefits to companies. And then patients can come in and do whatever they want. For years, the fertility insurance was very discriminatory against the LGBTQ population because you had to prove infertility. So I could have had the best fertility benefits, but if I was married to a woman, we couldn't access them until we showed that we had tried for a year.
Got it.
How are we going to show we tried? We have the same gamete. So the insurance company would say, you're out of luck. You got to go do a year of IUI, but that was so expensive, right? And it wasn't. So then the fertility benefits companies popped up, and now you can do whatever you want. You could be a same-sex male couple and use those benefits towards egg donor and surrogacy. You can be a single woman and do it by use donor sperm. So it has changed, and a lot of companies have really, and again, not every company, but you call it Starbucks, Home Depot, Walmart, like you would be very surprised at how many have started to offer something, not necessarily all of it, but at least something.
Right. And I'm so glad you mentioned LGBT because it is funny. So I have a good lesbian friend who she carried her twins and her wife carried, they have 3 kids and her wife carried a singleton. And she's become a supporter of our work. And because at first she was like, I get that you help LGBT people adopt. And I go, I'm going to tell you something very interesting. We give grants to a lot of lesbians who wanted to carry too. And then they find out they're infertile. She was like, oh my God, I didn't think of that. And that's it. I just want to keep having these conversations because at the end of the day, my mission, and I know it's yours too, I want everybody who wants to be a parent to have that shot. And that's my goal every day. And then I've raised the money, like this year, HelpUsAdopt.org in 2025 is giving away $3 million in adoption grants.
Wow.
It's not enough yet. It's not enough yet. And we give grants up to $30,000. And that's my mission. But now that I'm moving forward this year, I just hired a community relations coordinator. And one of the bridges we are finally going to build, and that's what I told you about in launching this podcast. I'm just so excited that you're here, is I'm going to stop talking about this bridge that I'm building between the IVF world, and we're actually going to do it this year. And it might only be a small group of doctors that feels this way at first, but we're going to make it a contagious information source. I'm not telling anybody what to do, but I want them to have the right facts about adoption. I want it to be not so scary. I hope you might never need it. You might never need it. But if you do, I'm here. And that's my goal here is to make this less scary for people and inclusive. But I think it's very cool. Yeah, I'll tell Brooke that I'm probably not going to get pregnant through IVF at 55 at menopause. But
you could, as long as you have a uterus, we could still probably get something going.
Well, I don't want adoption to be the stepchild anymore. And I even forgot to ask you at the beginning. You remember how we met? Like, you found
Soul
me.
Cycle.
You found me.
Yeah.
And I got this email from you saying,
I remember you were doing a ride at Soul Cycle for Help Us Adopt. And I was like, oh, wow, that's so awesome. I'd love to participate in that. Yeah.
And your email said, I am a fertility doctor. And you brought one of your partners.
Yeah.
And we're pro-family. And we're very interested in the work you're doing. And over the years, you've had conversations with people who have reached out to me just to hear more. And with me, there's never any pressure. People think I'm going to sell adoption, but I've actually been known with friends of friends to say, can you afford one more round? If you afford one more round of IVF and it doesn't work, what's your plan? And I map it out with them and I go, your head and your heart are not done. Go do the round. Best friend of a friend of mine who got pregnant because of her conversation with me and she did one more round. And my friend is always like, oh my God, she talks about you all the time, that she has her daughter because you were just open and honest about the emotional roller coaster. And I'm proud of that fact. You have to buy in your head and your heart to become a mom, period. It doesn't matter how, but you have to be on the same page. And that's what I love about what you do and talking to people. Now, do they always listen? Do people like when you deal with the truth? How does that go over?
No, but I've learned to develop a thick skin as I've gotten older and done this longer. Not everyone is for everyone, right? Some doctor-patient relationships don't work because either the doctor or the patient are looking for different things. I am very honest. That's what I like. And so that's what I give. I don't bullshit people. I've learned that sometimes you can deliver no bullshit over time, right? Like I can't see someone and be like, you need egg donor because they're not ready to hear that if it's my first time meeting them. I can start to drop that in over time. We're like, hey, I don't know if IVF is the best way for you to succeed. But I also think that we do people a disservice by lying to them so that they don't have to face the reality. And I've learned that sometimes that can be a deal breaker for some people.
Yeah. I was telling my husband that I was talking to you this week. And I was saying I was so excited. And I said to him, I go, do you remember at the end of our journey that we went and got a second opinion? And he's like, vaguely. He did not love IVF at all. He wanted to adopt before I did, which is very rare. It's usually the other way around. But at any rate, at the end of the road, I said to my doctor, who I adored, I hope you don't mind, but I would like to get a second opinion because I'm praying to God you missed something obvious. And he handed me my file and he said, I hope I did. And we drove to the referral far. It would have been a nightmare if we had had to do that. The doctor read it all and he said he missed nothing. And I said, okay. And I was just thinking we were leaving because that was the answer for us. And he goes, but I suggest that you do more rounds with me and start immediately because I think at that point I was 33 and a half. And I was pissed at that point because I was like, what? I just had 5 rounds, 3 pregnancies, 3 miscarriages. And your answer is just that I'm not getting any younger? Are you kidding? And that's basically what he said. And I left there a little mad at that referral. Again, could have been my situation, could have been a lot of things. But what if I had spent more money? I didn't have more money to spend. Yeah. And that's where it's hard.
And unfortunately, I do bring that up with patients. I said, where are you with your resources? Because we have to think about that as we plan for the future. Because our goal is for you to become a mom or dad or whatever you're 2 moms, like that's our goal, right? So how do we get there most effectively, including the desires that if it's one person or both people have? And I think it's not fair to not discuss that because it is an elephant in the room that we have to address.
We had just enough money for an adoption left. We were very aware of it. But as you said, 3 miscarriages, as I tell people, I'm like, forget it. That's enough for any lifetime. No one should live through that. So I was really at the end of many roads, but the money was definitely an option of the reason I was also very focused on shifting gears so that I became a mom. And this is a good story too, for those out there who might be listening or patients, who like think I can't not be pregnant. And again, for some, great. But here was my learning experience. I adopted Jane, knowing I was going to adopt 2 children at least. That was my goal. And I went into the adoption with the mentality that I was going to adopt, and then I was going to go back and do IVF again because I was pretty convinced it would work. And I was pretty convinced I needed it. So I adopted Jane, got home, fell in love with motherhood 10 times more than I thought I would, which was already pretty high.
Yeah.
And when the time came for a sibling, we had moved to New York. Okay. We had moved to New York. We were within walking distance of some of the top clinics in the world that people fly in for, that people travel and get temporary housing in New York City for. And my husband came to me, who hated IVF, and said, now that we're here, if you want to do it again, I'll do it. And I looked at him and I was like, okay, so big points for saying that. Thank you. I'm going to adopt again. I get it. For me, I got it. And thank God, because Brooke is here. That was my story. But I always like people to know that I thought I was going to do it again. And I think it's just nice to know that sometimes people change their minds because of a road they took that they would have never taken for themselves. Maybe some of your patients who do an egg donor feel the same story come on about they weren't sure they were going to do it because it's not their biology, and they took the risk. And they got to be pregnant, and they realized that the pregnancy was important to them and that they got the child they were supposed to get. Because I really do believe that is all.
I say that all the time. I said, I know
it is happening. I try to tell people your story is happening whether you like it or not. And you can either go along with it or fight it. But sometimes you get sent in a direction you should have found for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I really think the baby you're meant to have. I do say that. I say, I know it sounds woo. And so I'm just going to say it. But maybe there's a reason that you're where you are. We can all look at all the negative, but we have to take a step away and be like, maybe there's a reason that I'm here. And whatever that reason is, I don't know, but I think that's true.
Yeah. And when I left my practice all those years ago, my doctor said to me, I think you have a different journey. And I'll never know if he was just saying that because he felt like that was the stock answer, or if for some reason he, I don't know, knew something I didn't know.
Yeah.
But when I started Help Us Adopt, of course, when Jane came home, I didn't do a baby shower. I did a welcome home baby party. So he and his wife came, and he was like, I told you, I had a different journey. And I was like, I'm so grateful it wasn't one of your success stories. And then when I started Help Us Adopt, he was involved at the beginning. I am glad I had a different story. And again, it's not here to say which way's wrong, but you can't ignore the stats. You can't ignore the numbers. And I just want to take the fear away for people about adoption.
Unfortunately, we all know that sometimes things are a business, right? But we're not in competition with each other. Like we're actually partners because we both want people to succeed. Yeah. Even with people when they come for second or third opinions, I'm like, no, I'm not here to be like, that person's bad, I'm good or whatever.
Right.
The point is to be like, I actually saw a patient before we started our conversation, a woman who actually is a physician who has done 5 unsuccessful transfers at a different fertility clinic. And she's like, I'm hoping you can tell me what the doctor did wrong. And I was like, nothing. Like, you've done everything. You're getting the short end of the stick. And unfortunately, we don't know why. I think as doctors, we don't learn how to like give bad news or to sit with someone in their pain. So it's so uncomfortable to be like, you didn't get pregnant, or I don't have the answer, or this wasn't successful. And so we like shy away from it, or we say, oh, I would have done this better, blah, blah, blah. But most of the time, that's not true. We have to be honest and say, I don't think there is anything I could have done differently.
Jaime, let's face facts. So growing up, there's the narrative the world tells us. And the narrative, first of all, needs to change, because the narrative for me was boy meets girl, boy and girl get married, girl gets pregnant and has a baby. Now, we all know that today's narrative is boy could meet boy, girl could meet girl. They don't even have to get married. Women can have a baby on their own. And the whole narrative for that part is blown to crap. That narrative has to change. But the narrative still is you're going to grow up and have a family. So there's this pressure on people. And I think that's what makes your job of bad news even an impossible game there. There's no win there because it is so deeply personal. I even tell people, I'm like, in my marriage vows, I'm Episcopalian, so I got married in a church. The minister said, and God, when the time is right, grant this young couple a baby. I'm like, Jesus, we hadn't even walked out of the church and there's already the pressure of like us having a baby. And I start to think about that. And I'm like, you guys, if it's unsuccessful, you don't have a win there. You're in an impossible situation based on societal pressure to reproduce. And I think that's part of this conversation is, for God's sake, we have to change narrative. And I've had young girls actually come up to me when I speak at events. 2 years ago in LA, I spoke at an event where Natalie Morales interviewed me. And the girl asked the question and said, I'm 21 years old. If you could go back and tell your 31-year-old self, or even younger, what happened to you, because I have a career and have had a career ever since I left college, and a successful one, would you go back and try to get pregnant right away and give up the career? And I said, I don't even have to think twice. The answer is no. And I know you're going to tell me that's staged. And I'm going to tell you why it's not. With my personality, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have thought that I'm the one that can beat the system. And I would have believed it to be true. And I did believe it to be true at 31. And I asked her why she was saying that. And she goes, that's what we're hearing. My friends groups and I are hearing that we should graduate from college and get married and have a baby, because what if we're infertile? But that means maybe not having the career that I've gone to college to pursue. And I walked out of there and I'm like, what the hell are we doing to these kids? As a woman, another woman hearing that, I would rather send her to you and have her be told about egg freezing versus giving up your, like, what are we doing right now with this pressure?
I think that's the benefit of egg freezing, right? And we talk about this a lot. Like, it's not right for everyone. It's not something everyone can access. I own that. I've spoken about this frequently. But I do think it provides women who desire the opportunity to potentially have a genetic child down the road. It does help them stay off the infertility because, like I said, most women don't have kids in their 20s anymore because of life, right? So inevitably, if you start to have kids in your late 30s, early 40s, you're probably going to experience infertility in some capacity. So if you have frozen eggs, I always say you may never use them. They may not work for you. You may decide you don't want a child, but generally you won't regret that you froze the eggs because you'll be like, they did give me optionality, right? Now, the egg freezing we do today is so different than the egg freezing we did 15 years ago because we were freezing eggs in women who were in their 40s. And so those were women who were coming at it too late. So it didn't work because you were 43 freezing your eggs. Those eggs worked. Now the women who freeze are in their late 20s, early 30s. And so their eggs quality is so much better. And that's really where the technology should be. It shouldn't be for somebody in their 40s who's already likely facing fertility struggles. So I do think we've done a good job at making women aware of the opportunities and what they can do to treat it.
I had drinks with a friend a month or so ago, and somehow something came up about this whole women and having kids and whatever, and being single, some of my friends and all this stuff. And she looked at me and she's like, well, I'm sort of afraid to tell you what I did. And I'm like, what could you have possibly done that I would? And she goes, I froze my eggs. And I said, now I'm mad. And she goes, see, I knew you would be. I go, but I'm not mad at you. Why you think? I'm mad at you that you thought I'd be mad. Was it important to you? Did it make you feel like you made the right decision for you? Is it something you wanted to do? Did you do it on your own accord? And she's like, yes to all of that. I go, then how the hell could I be mad? I'm not you. I am just for women, I'm pro motherhood. Like, I'm pro parenthood. And who knows if she's even going to need them.
Yeah.
But it was important to her and she did it. And that's great. Why are we afraid to have these conversations with people? I go, I made my decisions for me. I got my girls. I'm good. I still have people. I hate to tell you how some people don't want to tell me they're pregnant. I'm like, I'm 55 years old. My kids are 15 and 19. And you think you can't tell me you're pregnant? Are we kidding? What is going on? And I won't stop until this gets a little more everyday conversation and supportive of all the different ways that this can happen for you. And We all need to cheer each other on. So many people said to me, "You're so brave, you're adopting." And I was like, okay, but why? You just don't know what you're going to get. And I hate to point out the obvious. It might not be my biology, but it's still someone else's biology. And biology is a tricky beast.
Yeah.
Pregnancy is a risky business. I don't care what the circumstances are. Things go wrong. Wiring isn't proper. It's all risky. It's all risky. I have a friend who had a miscarriage at 7 months, for God's sake. Like, we all know the stories.
We know people whose babies die a week after birth, a year after.
Yes.
So
Yes.
nothing is guaranteed and nothing is perfect.
No, I hear that about surrogacy as people say, I'm doing surrogacy because I can guarantee that everything's going to be fine with the child. I'm like, that is not why you should be doing surrogacy. Nothing's a guarantee.
Yeah.
You're not orchestrating a robot here.
Yeah.
It's a human life. It's biology. And that's it. I just want like everything to be open and supportive and cheer people on to be parenthood, no matter what that path looks like for people. I just think it's so important. And I'm so grateful to you for being so open always to talk about these things. And I really, truly hope that people listening today are like, this is helping me. Or I know someone who should listen to this podcast because they're stuck. They're stuck. They're scared. They don't know how to move forward. If you, hypothetically, saw a bridge exist, what would you as a female doctor like to see on the bridge with adoption information? Like, what do you think would be helpful?
When I have a patient who decides they want to do IVF or they want to do egg donor or sperm donor, I almost can send them to that division, like third-party reproduction or the IVF team. So I would like the ability to say, okay, I want you to speak to somebody who is well-versed in adoption and can review with you all of the legal part of it, the finances, the weight, all of the stuff that we can do for our fertility treatments to be able to offer that for adoption as well.
And the other funny thing that I do want to talk about is the stereotypes in adoption, because when I burst on the scene 19 years ago as this mom by adoption in New York City, everybody said, you don't look like a mom by adoption. The hell does that mean? I know what that means. I know what the world thinks adoption is. But I think this is part of why my story is so important. It's like, you don't know. You don't know who's a mom by adoption. They might not be talking about it. You don't know who's adopted.
We make assumptions about other people. And then sometimes you're like, oh, wow, I was totally wrong. And so a lot of times it's assumptions we hold about ourselves. And so we don't know where to go with them. But I think if we were less judgmental, like, who cares? Like, you do you, I'll do me. Like, you want to do that? I want to do this. Great. I'm not going to judge you. Like, obviously, I don't want you to be making an unhealthy decision. But as long as it's good for you, why are we here to criticize other people? I just don't see what's helpful there.
On that note, when I was going through IVF and did 5 cycles, there were friends of mine and people in my life who basically got pregnant by looking at their husband. And they criticized me, all the hormones and drugs I was putting into my body. And I was pissed because I'm like, you didn't walk my walk.
Yeah.
They told me horrible things. I'm not going to say them here. But very easy for you to tell me that I shouldn't have put all those drugs and hormones in my body 5 cycles. You tell me you want to do IVF, I'm going to cheer you on. I might tell you, look up the success rates for your age group because they might shock you. I wish I had known those going into it. I wish I had known more upfront that even I was 33, it's a 50% success rate. Under 35.
It is not 100%. Even using an egg donor and a gestational carrier, which are obviously like known sources of gamete and uterus, you're still never going to have 100% success rate.
Yeah. And that's why when people say, what was your biggest thing? I was caught off guard that it didn't work. I never even questioned. So caught off guard. Failure wasn't even on the radar screen. I just assumed I'm young, I'm healthy, I have the money to pay these bills, I'm with a good doctor, with a good lab, I'm good.
Yeah.
And that's what caught me off guard. And I just, again, some people don't get me and they're like, you're such a negative naysayer. I go, I don't want anybody to be caught off guard again. It's a horrible feeling. I want you to go in and I don't want you to think it won't work, but I want you to be based in reality. There's a chance might not work. It works for a lot of people, but I'm living proof it doesn't work for everybody. But you're always lovely to talk to me. And I always love running into you in our neighborhood Starbucks. It's a good thing. And tell everybody where they can find you.
I work at CCRM, the Colorado Center for Reproductive Medicine in New York. And I have a professional Instagram where I like to provide informative videos called A Fertile Future.
Yeah, I do like that. I watch them, believe it or not.
Because
here's the thing. I'm an equal opportunity friend. And one of my daughters says she's not having children. And I think she might be right. I don't think that road might be her thing. My other daughter says she's going to adopt because she's adopted. But I keep telling her, you might want a different story. Let's leave it up to you in the future. You don't have to make that decision now. And if they don't want to have kids, I took that pressure off them too. I just wanted you guys. I don't need to be a grandmother. If it's what you want, I will be there with bells on. But I want you to do what you want to do in this lifetime. And let's take the pressure off. Jaime, thank you so much for coming. I want to thank all of you today for listening to the Fawcett Report. I hope you found some good nuggets here because I think there was a lot of good information and you just heard from one of the good guys out there. 30 Seconds with Becky Fawcett. Years ago, when I was trying to figure out how to show up on social media, because I'm not 22, everybody kept saying, you need to do video. You need to do video. You need to have reels. I don't even think back then I knew what a reel was. And video, oh my God, I don't want to sit down and shoot something formal. So what did I do? I tried to do something staged in my office and I needed someone else to be there to film it. And I couldn't just do it impromptu with what I was thinking about. I had to map out the questions so someone else could ask them to me. And I stopped doing it for a while. And then one day I was walking down the street and something pissed me off because that's usually how this all happens. And I pulled out my phone and I put it on video and I did the camera back on me. And I started walking down the street and talking. 30 Seconds with Becky Fawcett. And every day was different. Some days it was about what had made me angry in the world. Other days it was about being a mom to teenagers in New York. Other days it was about something I was wearing. And then my sunglasses became an accessory every single day. And people started asking, how many pairs do you actually have? And I started sharing my life that way through 30 Seconds with Becky Fawcett. And some episodes were messy and embarrassing, but I shared them and I talked about when I almost got fired and I quit instead. And I mentioned where that happened at the job. And I'd never mentioned that live before. I'd always kept that detail quiet. And people started responding. Me too. Thank you for sharing. Talked about open adoption, taking my kids to meet their birth mothers, having their birth mothers in my apartment, at my dinner table, what that meant, all these things. And then a couple years ago, I stopped because I thought, oh, this is ridiculous. No one cares. No one cares. And I'm this fool walking down the street in New York City, filming myself, talking to myself, and no one cares. So I stopped. Then people started reaching out. Where are you? What happened to 30 seconds? And I was like, what do you mean what happened to 30 seconds? It was stupid. And they were like, oh my God, I live for them. I watch you every day. I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding. I get messages of, thank you for making me think a little differently and showing me that kindness does exist and how to have purpose in my life. And yes, I really did want to know that your glasses were from Amazon and $12 instead of the fancy Oliver Peoples ones that you wore the other day that were ridiculous, let's be honest. And I get the nicest messages this way and comments. And why won't you talk about this? Why don't you talk about this? Because I will talk about anything. You ask me, as long as it's not mean, and I will talk about anything. So 30 seconds has become part of my daily routine. Sometimes on the weekends, I take the weekend off. And the only two constants, there's usually large sunglasses involved, and it's never 30 seconds, but it's pretty good. So today, I am going to end this podcast with a 30 seconds with Becky Fawcett. It's going to be my signature ending for all my podcasts because it's part of who I am. in my journey through this crazy world as a infertile blonde and a mom by adoption and a nonprofit executive founder and a opinionated loudmouth woman. So today I want to tell you this. Our 30 seconds is going to be about what I wish someone had told me as I headed into the IVF world, which I wish I'd had a friend that had said, here's the deal. I'm sorry you're here. I know you want this more than anything, but it might not work. Here are the numbers. It might work because it works for a lot of people, but it might not work. And have you prepared yourself mentally for that option? Now, you don't want to go into it being negative or thinking it won't work, because if that's how you're going into it, just save your money and just don't, because that's too stressful. But tuck it in the back of your head that you might have a different road. That's it. I wish I hadn't been caught off guard. And as I always tell people, I never wish infertility on anybody. And just seriously, it's a horrible journey. But adoption, I wish everyone could adopt. It's magic. The 2 women that placed their babies in my arms, they're magic. And those babies, they changed the world. So that's what I wish I knew. And that's what I'm leaving you with. And maybe you don't need that, but maybe you know someone who does. 30 Seconds with Becky Fawcett. Thank you for listening to the Fawcett Report. I'm so glad you were here today. And here's to seeing the world a little differently and possibly using your voice to make a difference. You can follow the Fawcett Report on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. And you can message me on Instagram or Facebook. And I will actually respond as long as you're not mean. You can disagree with me. You can share your point of view, but you can't be mean because I don't do mean. And finally, if you're curious about my adoption advocacy and family building work through helpusadopt.org, you can find us there on Instagram and Facebook, as well as through the website, helpusadopt.org. See you next time.